The sky burned red with smoke. Fires raged across the once great cities of the Maya, their towering temples crumbling under siege. Once thriving plazas stood silent, their carved stone monuments defaced or abandoned. What had taken centuries to build, pyramids, palaces, and intricate networks of trade, now lay in ruins. This was not the work of a single battle, nor the passing misfortune of a kingdom. It was the collapse of an entire civilization. For generations, scholars have debated what caused this downfall. Was it drought, famine, environmental ruin, or was it something far more brutal? War. As we journey through the rise and fall of the classic Maya civilization, we will uncover the forces that shaped its golden age and the violence that may have shattered it. Long before the smoke and silence, the Maya world was alive with energy, ambition, and innovation. By the height of the classic period, 250 to 900 CE, their civilization had reached extraordinary levels of complexity. They were not a single empire, but a network of independent city-states, each ruled by its own king and supported by a vast web of farmers, artisans, warriors, priests, and traders. From the dense jungles of the Petén Basin to the highlands of Guatemala and the Yucatan's limestone plains, the Maya built monumental cities that defied the natural landscape. These urban centers, Tikal, Copan, Palenque, Calakmul, and many others, rose like islands in a sea of green, their towering pyramids piercing the sky. The Maya were master builders. They carved stone without metal tools, raised multi-story temples without wheels or draft animals, and engineered intricate water systems to support large populations. Their plazas buzzed with life. Merchants bartered cacao beans for obsidian blades, scribes recorded royal decrees on stelae, and priests performed rituals to appease gods who governed rain, war, and time itself. The Maya developed one of the most sophisticated writing systems of the ancient world, blending logograms and syllabic signs to record history, astronomy, and prophecy. Their calendar system tracked celestial movements with astonishing precision, allowing them to predict eclipses and align their temples with solstices. Yet beneath this grandeur, competition ran deep. City-states vied for dominance, forming alliances and betraying them when it suited their interests. Warfare was not uncommon. It was woven into the fabric of political life. Kings waged campaigns to capture rivals, secure tribute, and legitimize their rule through divine conquest. Captured rulers were paraded in public spectacles before being sacrificed, their blood offered to the gods. These rituals reinforced the sacred authority of kings, whose power was believed to be tied to cosmic balance. But as dynasties grew more entrenched, so did rivalries. The stage was set for an era of increasing militarization, one that would shape the fate of the entire civilization. At first, these conflicts seemed manageable. Victories brought prestige, new lands, and captives to display in ritual ceremonies. But over time, the frequency and intensity of warfare escalated. Cities fortified themselves, constructing defensive walls and ditches. Royal inscriptions, which had once proudly recorded royal lineages for generations, grew sparse. In some cities, the names of kings vanished entirely. At Copan, the last ruler, Yas Pasa Shanyopat, still built monuments, but his inscriptions spoke of legitimacy struggles rather than triumph. In the northern city of Dos Pilars, a younger son of the Tikal dynasty waged relentless war against his own brother, who ruled the capital. These conflicts drained resources and weakened city-states from within. Meanwhile, evidence of fortifications increased. Walls, ditches, and barricades appeared around once open cities. Signs of unrest multiplied. Mass graves, burned structures, and hastily abandoned homes. The balance that had sustained the Maya for centuries was tipping, and war seemed ever closer. In the western lowlands, the city of Piedras Negras faced growing instability. Once a powerful ally of Calakmul, it suddenly disappeared from records after a brutal attack in the late 7th century. Archaeologists have found its royal palace looted and set ablaze, with no signs of rebuilding. Was this the result of internal rebellion or an external siege? Either way, it signaled a new kind of violence, one that did not just target rival armies, but entire populations. Across the landscape, similar patterns emerged. At Huaca, once a prosperous city in northern Guatemala, researchers discovered signs of destruction and possible cannibalism, though such cases remain rare and controversial. At Caracal, once a dominant force in Belize, defensive walls stretched for miles, suggesting that rulers anticipated large-scale assaults. The increasing militarization of these cities points to a world where peace was no longer guaranteed. Even in regions that remained relatively stable, fear spread. Farmers abandoned fields near major roads, retreating to more defensible locations. Trade routes, once bustling with merchants carrying jade, cacao, and obsidian, became dangerous. With fewer goods moving between cities, economies faltered. Without tribute and commerce, rulers lost the ability to fund grand projects, maintain public works, or provide for their people. The Maya world was unraveling, not all at once, but in pieces. Each city fell differently, yet all shared the same trajectory: isolation, conflict, and eventual abandonment. And as warfare intensified, one event would serve as the tipping point, a moment that sent shockwaves across the entire civilization. One event stands out as a possible catalyst for widespread chaos: the fall of Dos Pilas in 760 CE. Baakal Ahau, the city's ruler, had spent years fighting his older brother, who ruled Tikal. When Dos Pilas finally fell, it sent shockwaves through the region. Other city-states, once aligned with either Tikal or Calakmul, scrambled to secure their positions. Alliances shifted overnight, and betrayals became common. With Dos Pilas gone, the delicate balance of power collapsed. Neighboring cities rushed to fill the void, leading to a chain reaction of warfare. Trade routes, once bustling with merchants carrying goods like jade and cacao, became dangerous. Farmers fled their fields, fearing raids. Cities that had once thrived on tribute and commerce now struggled to feed their populations. War was no longer a distant threat, it had become the new reality. The collapse of Dos Pilas was not just the fall of one city, it was the unraveling of an entire system. For decades, the rulers of Dos Pilas had acted as a buffer between Tikal and its enemies, particularly the powerful city of Calakmul. Founded by a younger son of Tikal's royal family, Dos Pilas had been strategically placed along key trade routes that connected the heart of the Maya lowlands. But instead of remaining loyal to his homeland, Baakal Ahau turned against Tikal, forming an alliance with Calakmul. This betrayal fractured the political landscape, turning what had been. The conflict between the two brothers, rulers of Tikal and Dos Pilas, was more than a personal feud. It symbolized the deepening divisions within the Maya world. Kings were supposed to be divine protectors, ensuring stability and prosperity. Yet here were two sons of the same dynasty, locked in brutal combat, each seeking legitimacy through conquest. As battles raged across the countryside, villages were caught in the crossfire. Archaeological evidence from the region shows signs of sudden destruction: burned homes, hastily abandoned workshops, and mass graves containing men, women, and children. These were not just soldiers dying in battle, they were civilians caught in the chaos of war. When Dos Pilas finally fell, its people faced a grim fate. Some may have fled into the forests, hoping to find refuge in smaller settlements. Others likely perished in the final assault. The victorious forces, whether from Tikal or another rival city, looted the palace and left the city to decay. No new monuments were built after this point. The grand stairways that once displayed the city's history in carved glyphs fell silent. Dos Pilas, once a thriving center of power, became a ghost town. But the consequences did not end there. With the city destroyed, its former allies were left vulnerable. Smaller vassal states that had relied on those pilas for protection suddenly found themselves exposed. Some switched allegiances, hoping to survive under a new patron. Others resisted and paid the price. Warfare spread like fire through dry grass, consuming one city after another. Rulers of Ceibal, Caricol, and Naranjo all felt the ripple effects of this collapse, forced to navigate an increasingly unstable world. As the 8th century progressed, violence became the norm. Where once kings fought to expand their influence, now they fought simply to survive. Inscriptions from this period show a growing sense of desperation. Rulers no longer boasted of victories or divine favor. Instead, they recorded failed campaigns, broken alliances, and the deaths of heirs. Some cities stopped recording their histories altogether, as if acknowledging defeat was too painful. This was the true tipping point. The fall of Dos Pilas did not cause the Maya collapse single-handedly, but it marked the moment when war became the dominant force shaping the region. What had once been manageable conflicts between rival dynasties had escalated into a full-scale breakdown of order. And once that balance was lost, recovery became nearly impossible. In the years that followed, the pattern repeated itself across the Maya lowlands. One city after another succumbed to violence, famine, or abandonment. Walls went up around once open plazas, fields lay untended, temples stood empty, their gods forgotten. The golden age of the classic Maya civilization was ending, and war had played a central role in its downfall. With the fall of Dos Pilas, the Maya world spiraled into deeper turmoil. One by one, cities succumbed to violence, famine, or abandonment. Archaeologists had found signs of sudden destruction, burned buildings, scattered human remains, and hastily buried treasures. These were not isolated incidents, but part of a broader pattern. As warfare intensified, cities fortified themselves further, diverting labor and resources away from agriculture and infrastructure. Crops failed. Water reservoirs dried up. Without food and clean water, even the mightiest cities could not survive. The collapse was not uniform. Some regions held on longer than others, but the trend was clear. The Maya world, once vibrant and interconnected, was fragmenting beyond repair. In the Petén region, where some of the greatest Maya cities had stood for centuries, the signs of decline became undeniable. At Aguateca, an elite residence was discovered with personal belongings still in place, as if its occupants had fled in terror, leaving behind tools, ornaments, and food stores. This was not a slow decline, but a sudden and brutal end. The attackers struck fast, forcing people to abandon their homes without time to gather their most valuable possessions. This kind of rapid destruction suggests that war was not just a political tool, but a means of erasing entire communities. Further south, in the Copan Valley, evidence of social breakdown is visible in the archaeological record. Once thriving neighborhoods show signs of abandonment, with homes left in disarray. Some structures appear to have been burned deliberately, while others were looted before being deserted. The last ruler of Copan, Jakpasa Shan Jopat, tried desperately to maintain order, commissioning new monuments and performing rituals to appease the gods. But his inscriptions tell a different story, one of growing instability and weakening authority. He no longer recorded major victories or divine favor. Instead, he emphasized his royal lineage, as if trying to convince his people, and perhaps himself, that his rule remained legitimate. In the western lowlands, the city of Piedras Negras faced a similar fate. Once a powerful ally of Calakmul, it suddenly disappeared from records after a brutal attack in the late 8th century. Archaeologists uncovered its royal palace, looted and set ablaze, with no signs of rebuilding. Was this the result of internal rebellion or an external siege? Either way, it signaled a new kind of violence, one that did not just target rival armies, but entire populations. At Waka,
a once prosperous city in northern Guatemala, researchers discovered signs of destruction and possible cannibalism, though such cases remain rare and controversial. At Caricol, once a dominant force in Belize, defensive walls stretched for miles, suggesting that rulers anticipated large-scale assaults. The increasing militarization of these cities points to a world where peace was no longer guaranteed. Even in regions that remained relatively stable, fear spread. Farmers abandoned fields near major roads, retreating to more defensible locations. Trade routes, once bustling with merchants carrying goods like jade and cacao, became dangerous. The Maya world was unraveling, not all at once, but in pieces. Each city fell differently, yet all shared the same trajectory: isolation, conflict, and eventual abandonment. And as warfare intensified, one event would serve as the tipping point, a moment that sent shockwaves across the entire civilization. As the 9th century approached, the pace of collapse accelerated. In the central Petén, the great city of Tikal, once the dominant power of the region, began to show signs of decline. Its monumental construction slowed, and its rulers stopped recording their histories in stone. The last known inscription at Tikal dates to 869 CE, an ominous silence that marked the end of an era. Other cities followed suit. In the Motagua River Valley, Quirigua continued to produce impressive stelae until the very end, but its final monuments lacked the grandeur of earlier works. In the Usumacinta River Basin, Yaxchilan and Bonampak saw their ruling dynasties disappear, leaving behind palaces filled with faded murals and broken pottery. By the close of the 9th century, most of the major classic Maya cities lay abandoned. The jungle reclaimed plazas once filled with life, and vines swallowed pyramids that had touched the sky. Some cities, like Chichen Itza in the north, continued to thrive, but they bore little resemblance to the classic-era metropolises. The collapse was not total, but it was profound. Scholars debate whether any single cause led to this downfall.
Yet war played a central role. It disrupted trade, destabilized governments, and forced people to flee their ancestral lands. The scars of this era remain visible in the ruins. Fortifications hastily built, monuments smashed, and bones bearing marks of violence. By the end of the 9th century, most of the great classic Maya cities lay empty. The jungle reclaimed plazas once filled with life, and vines swallowed pyramids that had touched the sky. Some cities, like Chichen Itza in the north, continued to thrive, but they bore little resemblance to the classic-era metropolises. The collapse was not total, but it was profound. Scholars debate whether any single cause led to this downfall, yet war played a central role. It disrupted trade, destabilized governments, and forced people to flee their ancestral lands. The scars of this era remain visible in the ruins. Fortifications hastily built, monuments smashed, and bones bearing marks of violence. Yet amid the destruction, traces of resilience emerge. Some communities adapted, shifting to smaller, decentralized societies. Others moved to the highlands or coastal regions, carrying fragments of their culture forward. The Maya did not vanish, they transformed. The abandonment of cities did not happen overnight. In many cases, populations declined gradually as families left for safer places. Archaeologists have found evidence of this slow exodus in the form of reduced construction activity, fewer burials in elite tombs, and declining agricultural output. At Tikal, one of the largest and most powerful cities of the Classic period, signs of decline appear around 850 CE. Monument inscriptions stopped being carved, palace complexes were no longer maintained, and new temples ceased to rise. By 900 CE, much of the city was deserted, its grand stairways silent, and its ball courts overgrown. But while the lowland cities fell into ruin, other regions showed signs of adaptation. In the northern Yucatan, Chichen Itza grew in importance during the post-classic period, 900 to 1500 CE. Unlike the classic Maya cities, which were ruled by divine kings, Chichen Itza appears to have been governed by a more collective leadership system. This shift may have allowed it to survive when others could not. Trade routes remained active, linking the Yucatan with distant Mesoamerican civilizations like the Toltecs of central Mexico. Artistic styles changed, blending old Mayan traditions with new influences from the north. In the highlands of present-day Guatemala, cities like Camenojuyu and Iximché persisted long after the fall of the southern lowland centers. These highland Maya groups developed different political structures, often based on confederations of city-states rather than centralized dynasties. They maintained strong cultural ties to their ancestors, continuing to speak Mayan languages and practicing modified versions of ancient rituals. Even today, millions of Maya descendants live in these regions, preserving elements of their heritage despite centuries of change. The collapse of the classic Maya civilization was not a singular event. It was a complex process shaped by war, environmental stress, economic instability, and shifting power dynamics. While some cities disappeared entirely, others evolved, adapting to new realities. The Maya world did not end, it transformed. And though the grandeur of the classic period faded, its legacy endured in the lives of those who carried it forward. The debate continues. Historians and archaeologists continue to argue over what truly caused the fall of the classic Maya civilization. Some emphasize environmental factors, prolonged droughts that starved cities and drained reservoirs. Others point to economic collapse as overpopulation and unsustainable farming practices pushed ecosystems past their limits. Still others see internal strife as the main culprit, with elite rulers clinging to power while their people suffered. Yet war remains a compelling explanation. Unlike gradual climate shifts or slow economic decline, war could bring swift devastation. It could burn cities, disrupt food supplies, and fracture alliances overnight. Recent discoveries support this view. Mass graves, scorched temples, and defensive structures all suggest violent upheaval. But was war alone enough to bring down an entire civilization? Some scholars argue that it was not. They note that Maya society had experienced cycles of warfare before without collapsing entirely. What made the 9th century different? One theory suggests that war acted as a catalyst, accelerating existing problems rather than causing them outright. If droughts reduced crop yields and trade networks faltered due to political instability, then war might have been the tipping point that pushed struggling cities past the brink. Environmental data supports the idea that drought played a role. Studies of lake sediments and cave formations indicate that several severe droughts occurred between 800 and 950 CE. These dry periods would have made it difficult to sustain large populations, especially in cities dependent on artificial reservoirs. Without enough water and food, people may have abandoned cities voluntarily, seeking refuge in more hospitable regions. This process, combined with warfare, could explain why so many sites were deserted at roughly the same time. Economic pressures also contributed to the crisis. As city-states fought for dominance, they required greater resources to fund armies, build fortifications, and maintain royal courts. Tribute systems broke down as vassal cities either rebelled or were destroyed. With fewer goods moving through trade routes, economies weakened. Farmers, burdened by heavy demands from rulers desperate to maintain control, may have simply walked away from their fields. Without agricultural surplus, cities could not sustain themselves. Political fragmentation further deepened the crisis. The rigid dynastic system that had ruled the classic Maya for centuries became increasingly unstable. When a king fell in battle or was captured, his entire court often collapsed with him. Succession disputes led to civil wars, weakening already fragile states. Some cities tried to hold on by shifting governance models, but these changes came too late to prevent widespread abandonment. The interplay of these factors make it difficult to assign a single cause to the collapse. War, drought, famine, economic failure, and political instability all played roles, but war stands out because of its immediacy. A prolonged drought might erode a society's strength over decades, but a decisive battle could determine the fate of a city in a single day. And in the final years of the classic period, decisive battles were happening across the Maya world. As research continues, new technologies are helping scholars piece together a clearer picture. LiDAR scans reveal hidden fortifications, satellite imagery tracks ancient deforestation patterns, and DNA analysis show how populations moved in response to crisis. Each discovery adds another layer to our understanding. But one thing remains certain. The fall of the classic Maya civilization was not a simple event. It was the result of a perfect storm, in which war played a central, if not singular, role. Though the cities of the classic Maya lie in ruins, their story is far from over. Every discovery, every translated glyph, and every analyzed artifact adds to our understanding of their world. The Maya themselves understood the importance of memory. Kings inscribed their deeds on stone to ensure they would not be forgotten. Today, scholars and descendants alike carry that mission forward, piecing together the past to illuminate the present. The collapse was not the end of the Maya, but a transformation, one that continues to shape the lives of millions in Central America. As we look to the future, we do so with respect for the past, recognizing that history is not static. It evolves, much like the people who lived it. The Maya remind us that civilizations rise and fall, but knowledge endures. And as long as we seek to understand, the story of the Maya will never truly end.